What's up, carnivores? This is Carnivore Kurt, your host, and on this video, we're gonna talk about the 6 keys to doing the nose to tail carnivore diet the right way. So before we jump into the keys, I wanna tell you the main philosophy here. The main philosophy here is that we're gonna be focusing on a nose to tail carnivore diet. If you're gonna do the elimination carnivore diet, you want to make sure that you're getting all the nutrients of the animal, not just the muscle meat. I don't wanna get too crazy on the science here. You ask me on the spot to explain everything, I'd probably tell you, hold up here. I can't really go into all the biochemistry of that, but what I will say is this. When you're eating the animal and you're eating a nose to tail carnivore diet, the idea here is that you're eating all of the animal. You're eating the brain, the liver, the kidneys, the heart, the tendons, the ligaments, basically the entire part of the animal, and you're not just getting a piece of really lean beef. If you eat just muscle meat, you're gonna run into problems. You're gonna be missing folate, you're gonna be missing vitamins, you're gonna be missing collagen, you're gonna be missing a lot of key ingredients that I'm gonna give you in these 6 keys that is really gonna help you dial it in and really get it to a balanced level where you can do it right. The other thing is if you're eating a lot of muscle meat, you're gonna be putting yourself into a higher fasted glucose level because a lot of the muscle meat is gonna be too heavy in protein and you're not gonna be getting enough fat. This diet, when it's done right as a nose to tail carnivore diet, is actually a keto diet, meaning the majority of the intake of your food that you're getting is gonna be from fat. It's gonna be from fat from the animals, but it's going to be fat, not protein. When I started this diet 9 months ago, I was a lot heavier on using just muscle meat. And what happened was my glucose levels went up. My resting glucose was pretty high. I also saw issues with lack of fat in my diet affecting testosterone, and I think that we've corrected that. On that note, let's go through some of the main keys. I'm gonna try to prioritize these, but keep in mind they're all pretty dang important and you wanna make sure you nail them all. So number 1, you wanna make sure your fat macros, meaning the amount of fat you eat, is going to be at least 2 to 1 for protein. And this is a really easy calculation. When you look at fat and you eat fat from a dietary perspective, you get roughly 9 calories out of a gram of fat. If you take a gram of protein, you're gonna get roughly 4. Same with carbohydrates, but we're not eating carbohydrates in this diet. So if you weigh out the muscle with the fat and they're equal weight, you're essentially gonna get 2 to 1 fat to protein. Now, I think you can play with this ratio and go even higher, and you're probably gonna see better benefits in terms of resting blood sugar levels and glucose and things like that. So you can actually go probably closer to 70 to 75% fat intake to 30 to 25% protein. Now, keep in mind, when you do eat cuts of beef, steak, sirloin, top roan, beef chuck roast, chicken, pork, lamb, whatever type of meat you're eating, you're going to be getting some fat in the meat. And I recommend that you check out like an app tracker that does macro tracking. It'll automatically calculate for you the amount of fat, protein, carbohydrates in the food that you're getting. And a lot of these trackers have pre-listed sources. So you can either scan the barcode of the food item you bought from Whole Foods, for example, or you can enter it in and then you can have it saved in your diary. And so what it does is as you go through the day, you can get a scale, which is very inexpensive as well. We're talking probably $15, $20 on Amazon for a simple food scale. You can then weigh out your food and then you can enter in the weight in grams or ounces on the tracker and you can weigh that out. And you can see, oh, okay, well, I've got 300 grams of beef chuck roast. That's gonna give me 40% to 60%. 60% of it's gonna be protein, 40% is gonna be fat. Well, I need to add in some more fat to get my macro content and my numbers up to the 70, 75% that I personally shoot for. So the rule of thumb, 2 to 1, you wanna get twice the calories from fat as you do for meat, which means roughly equal in weight in terms of what you're eating for fat to protein. And again, you do this to stay in ketosis, to lower your blood sugar levels, and to kind of make it more metabolically efficient. So we addressed the fat to protein ratio in the first key, but the second key is balancing the methionine glycine ratio. And the way you want to do this is you want to think about every 100 grams, 150 grams of meat that you're eating, muscle meat, to add about 10 grams of glycine. Now you can also add collagen protein. For some people, there's histamine that can affect them and cause gut issues. I personally don't do well with collagen, but I do fantastic with glycine. Glycine is a very inexpensive amino acid. You can buy it through bulk supplements online. Your body actually makes it. It's not essential, but you're probably not getting enough of it in your diet. And as you get older, it can be hard to keep up with the demands, especially on such a big, heavy muscle meat diet where you're taking a lot of your protein in through the carnivorous diet. You're gonna have a lot of methionine coming into your body, and you wanna balance it with glycine. So think every 100 to 150 grams of methionine or muscle meat, you add in about 10 grams of glycine. So number 3, make sure you're including organ meats. There is so much nutrition in organ meats. It's incredible. In fact, a lot of the B vitamins, the folate, the riboflavin, which is also B vitamin, choline, these things come from the organ meats. In particular, the liver, the kidneys, and even the heart are fantastic sources of these micronutrients. If you just eat muscle meat and eat steaks and ground beef, you're gonna be missing out on a tremendous amount of these vitamins, and it's gonna affect you, and you're gonna look at your blood work and you're gonna see issues with your lack of balance. But if you eat liver, which I highly recommend because it's just such a nutritious item to add to your diet, you're gonna see a huge benefit from that. So think of liver as kind of nature's multivitamin and look at ways to implement that into your diet. I personally eat 4 to 8 ounces of liver a day. It is higher in protein and very low in fat. So it is gonna be something that you need to account for when you look at your macros and you weigh it out. But it's so nutritious, it gives you so much benefits. There could be a whole video on liver, which we'll probably do in this channel. But for now, just kind of look at getting organ meats. Liver is very easy to get. You can go to your local butcher shop, you can go online, you can go to Google Shopping and type in liver, beef liver, grass finished, grass fed. Even if it's grain fed, it's fine. The main thing with grains and grain finished beef is watch out for GMO, watch out for Roundup. You know, it's the things you're not wanting to get in your diet that can be in these types of cuts of meat. Which is why we kind of encourage the grass-fed versus the grain-fed when we're looking at beef. Which is a nice segue into point number 4, which is you want to be balancing your omega-3, omega-6 ratio. And that is the fatty acid ratio that your body needs to have some balance with. You hear people taking fish oil. Fish oil supplements, a lot of them are rancid. They're just not well processed, and the oil itself doesn't make it long enough it doesn't last long enough in a bioavailable form where it's really that good for you. And so for the majority of people, the best recommendation, focus on grass-fed, because again, that helps with the animal meat being more balanced in the omega-3 that it has versus the grains that the animals are eating, which again comes through in the meat as omega-6 fats. So if you're getting grass-fed meats, what you're intaking, you're gonna get more of the omega-3 balance. One really killer source of omega-3 is Ecora, which is salmon roe. It's harder to find, and it typically comes around once or twice a year. I typically buy a bunch when I get it, but living in Austin, Texas, where I'm at now, we have a lot less seafood options. So I really try to focus on grass-fed, grass-finished beef to make sure that I keep that balance in mind. The other thing to look at is clean seafood. So smaller fish like sardines, salmon that are earlier in the food chain, not things like swordfish or tuna, ideally from the wild caught up in the north, places like Alaska or in the Nordics can be really, really clean. And those sources of seafood can be fantastic for omega-3s as well. And lastly, I'll mention, I'm a huge fan of duck yolks. Duck yolks have B vitamins in them, they have choline, they have, I think they have some iodine as well. And then they also have a bit of benefit with balancing out the omega-3. So adding duck yolks is a great way to boost your fat macros. They're actually pretty good. I eat them raw. I just sift out the egg white from the yolk because the egg white itself really doesn't bring a whole lot of nutrition beyond some protein, which you can get from all the meat you're eating anyway in the liver. And so most of the time the protein from the egg white or the duck white is just, it's not nearly as beneficial, and it's something you wouldn't want to eat raw either. So grass-fed meats, Ecora, clean seafood, duck yolks. Look at those as ways to kind of boost the omega-3, omega-6 ratio. Number 5, calcium. This is a tricky one. For a lot of people on this diet, calcium is going to be a little bit of a trick, because when you think about it, as a carnivore, we probably ate smaller bone animals and we ate the bones with them. You can get it from things like sardines. But again, we're dealing with seafood, which can always be risky because seafood tends to be canned, which canned items are lined with plastic. And again, we're trying to avoid plastic because plastic can be a hormone disruptor and it's pretty much in everything in our environment. So looking for ways to avoid canned items because of the plastics. So look at possibly supplementing calcium. There's options out there for buying bone meal. You'll get it in bone broth if you make your own bone broth. There are concerns about bone broth and the bones having lead in them. So again, you're kind of, it's a little bit tricky. I personally take calcium supplements at night and in the morning. It helps me sort of feel a little bit more calm and balanced. And I like taking them on an empty stomach. It kind of changes the chemistry of my acidity in my stomach. I use a brand called Pure Encapsulations, but dairy can be another source of calcium as well. The thing with dairy though, is that for a lot of people, dairy is quite triggering. And I know personally for me, when I add dairy to my diet, my skin starts to break out. I have issues with my skin. I almost always feel bloating when I eat dairy. And so one of the tricks is going with A2 versus A1 dairy. And that's from goats and certain animals, like I think yaks, that you can get dairy from. And dairy certainly can bring you some of the calcium that you would need in your diet. But in general, if you're not doing dairy, which I personally would recommend you eliminate because it can be quite triggering for many people, you are doing a no-till carnivore diet without dairy, then you want to supplement calcium. The last point, number 6, isn't an essential point, but it is one to keep in mind, and that is eating red meat. Focus on darker, redder cuts of meat from bigger animals. You're going to find that a lot of times those cuts, the nutritional breakdown of, for example, beef liver versus chicken liver is going to be higher. And I think it has to do with the animal and what they're eating, as well as kind of like the overall development of them and how much they're bigger. But you also see it in the muscle meat. So a light meat chicken is going to have less magnesium, less of the minerals that you're going to get in like a red steak ribeye, for example. So focus on the darker meats, and you're gonna see that you get more nutrition out of them. They're just gonna feel more fulfilling as your body adjusts and you become a full-on carnivore. So that is it. So number 1, amount of fat you eat is going to be at least 2 to 1 for protein. But the second key is balancing the methionine glycine ratio. So number 3, make sure you're including organ meats. Point number 4, which is you want to be balancing your omega-3, omega-6 ratio. Number 5, calcium. The last point, number 6, eating red meat. I hope you found this video informative. If you liked what I had to say here, then leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm looking forward to putting out more content as it relates to this. Let me know in the comments how dairy works for you. I'm curious for a lot of people. I think, does dairy affect you, or do you do well with dairy? So comment below and let me know about the dairy. And then if there's one point in the list here that really hit home for you, let me know about that. Or if there's something that you think that maybe you're not getting or that you think is really a requirement on the diet, I'd love to hear about that as well. So thank you for watching, and I appreciate the feedback.